Over to you, Kath.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Lily, and lovely to see you all again. I feel now quite, we've had two sessions down, so there's a real little community here. It's great to see you all. And sorry, this is our last session, but looking forward to sharing it with you. Before I dive into thinking about connection, is there any reflections from the last couple of weeks, anything that's happened since last week, any of those small wins that I know we were talking about, those 1%ers, those marginal gains? Has anybody got any thoughts, any comments, anything to share? Feel free to sort of quickly unmute or to share a comment in the chat, or just any reflections you've had about, any of these conversations we've had that pop back in your minds at any point. Everyone's still probably processing whatever they've just finished doing at this point, but I just wanted to see if there was anything. Do add to the chat. Yeah, great, Lara. Lovely to hear that. Yeah, the 1%ers, it's an absolute core of a resilient mindset to be doing just those, the small 1%ers, the things we can control. Yeah, taking some daily supplements, looking after ourselves, getting the vitamin D in. There are lots of things we can't control, but actually if we focus on those small wins, they are a part of creating success on our own terms. Oh, lovely, Sarah. That's great to hear. Yeah, actually taking time to notice them. Journaling is an amazing thing. Even just sort of free writing, if you don't have a regular journal, but you've got a notebook or something, or even any piece of paper, and just 10 minutes, download what's in your mind and then think about those small things. Great. Yes, Mina. What's the experience we're having and that we enable others to have when they're with us? That's a huge one for thinking about how we can have an impact on the people we encounter. And, again, there's so many things we can't control, but actually every time we have a meeting, a conversation, every time we connect with others, then we have an opportunity to have an impact. Brilliant. Goodness, loving that. Thank you, Catherine. Clarifying priorities. Yeah. Always clarifying, ongoing clarification is something that helps us. Lovely, really good. Loving that, Ali. Great. Yes, it's so important to move. Lily and I were discussing, I've got a new standing up desk, which I'm actually not using at the moment because this is more of a sort of conversational session, but I'm finding that helpful just to be moving a bit more even when I'm at my desk. And then it's easier just to kind of walk away and go for a walk as well. Great. Lovely. Thank you very much, Fargo. Delighted you're enjoying the book. Brilliant. There'll be lots that we've covered, and there's obviously lots more in there that we haven't had time to. So really great to hear that. Great. Thank you. Okay, so on to today, on to connection. And this really is the glue that pulls together all of the three C's, if you like, that underpins everything that we do. And it's the people side. It's rebalancing, making sure that we can really invest in the people and not get so distracted by our to-do lists all the time. So we've been focusing a lot on the way we think, the way we behave, and the way we connect with others. Obviously, those all interconnect with one another. One feeds and impacts on the other. And the three C's have enabled us to explore these more in different aspects of our life and how we set out the long win and redefine success on our own terms. So we've looked at clarity, that purpose piece. Brilliant to hear. I think it was Zoe saying there that you are thinking about that first thing in the morning. What gets you out of bed? Those long win, the small wins that make up the long win, those 1%ers, that learning piece that we're always open to learning. It keeps us moving forward. Success in itself is personal growth, it's development, asking questions, exploring new things. Even when seemingly something hasn't gone well, we can move forward by the knowledge and the experience we've had that shapes us for whatever comes next. So I wanted to talk about connection in the context of my diplomatic experience, where I worked for the Foreign Office for 12 years. And as part of that, of course, was involved in lots of negotiations. And I worked in quite a few conflict-affected issues around the world, conflict-affected states from Iraq, Afghanistan, and many other instabilities that occur around natural disasters. And actually, as part of my work, I created a cross-government unit where we wanted to find and be able to deploy civilians to these unstable environments, because often the military are quite used to operating in them. But the military are really, their work is about securing an area, making sure it's somewhere that they get rid of the baddies, but they don't do the next bit, which is stabilizing a country, bringing in all of the different political, social elements that are needed. Often real basics, from supplying, making sure there's a water supply to a city, making sure people have enough hours of electricity in a day to do some basic things. So all of these elements are really important when a situation is very unstable. These are the things that we need in order to be able to stabilize and then create longer term reconstruction. So there was this growing body of policy to stabilize countries that were near to conflict, just been in conflict, just coming out of it. But the challenge was, how do we get civilians who can thrive in these really hostile environments? Because a lot of the time, people were struggling to do their jobs. So first of all, we had to identify who's got the right skills, who's worked in perhaps developing countries, who's able to operate in these places. And then how can we help them to thrive in a really challenging environment? So you're not free to walk around, you're wearing body armor, there might be rockets and mortars being kind of fired in the environment you're in. So really unstable, you're traveling in armored vehicles, perhaps got close protection with you. Really different from how a civilian would normally operate, how a diplomat would operate, or anyone else not in the military. And we did some research with some psychologists, some occupational psychologists, to find out what are the things that help people to thrive in an insecure environment. Now, of course, lots of us now are experiencing this all the time because, whilst we haven't got rockets and mortars coming at us, we're in an environment where it doesn't feel safe. We actually can't now walk the streets in the same way that we did. People avoid us. We feel we've got to avoid busy places. So it's got an extra resonance talking about this today, even though it's not quite as hostile as some of the environments that I was managing and working in back then. The interesting thing is, what were the things that were really important to help others to thrive in these challenging situations? The first one, a really important one, is a proactively supportive environment. This is where connections become important, but connections, not just ones that sort of sit there, but active connections, ones where instead of, if it's a case of come and tell me if you've got a problem, that's not a proactively supportive environment. A proactively supportive environment is one where people are looking out for each other, caring about each other, noticing if someone isn't quite themselves and reaching out at an early point, rather than waiting for it to get to a crisis point where suddenly, things have gone too far and it's much harder to support someone at that point. So thinking about how can we proactively support those we work with and live with, personal and professional lives, rather than just waiting until things become a problem. Quite a lot of our organisational environments kind of operate more on there's a welfare department if you've got a problem. But really, we want to be in a mode where we are connecting with others much more proactively, so that we know the support is there. We don't have to ask for it. It's actually already kind of coming to us. People are already aware that we need support. And at the moment, that's, of course, really important for all of us in this extremely challenging time. There were then 3 points thereafter that we started to build into how we prepared people for working in these difficult environments. The first was the need for psychological flexibility and adaptability. And the biggest thing here is that learning mindset, where you're willing to be challenged in the way you think, where you're willing to grow and see things through a different lens. Really, learning sits at the heart of this flexibility. In these environments where literally the world changed overnight, the environment you were in, things were blown up, people left, new things happened very quickly. It was very volatile. So we had to constantly be thinking, okay, what I was doing yesterday to supply water to the city, that infrastructure has just been destroyed. What else can I do? How else can we do it? What else are our options? So that flexibility, as we've all had tested over the last year, of thinking, how can I do the job I was doing in a different way? How can I add value in a different way? What are the things that I can do that can help me to, really find new ways of contributing, of adding value, of earning money, of doing what I used to do? So that is absolutely key. The second thing then was understanding ourselves under pressure. Again, the tendency can be that we do training around or psychological profiles, Myers-Briggs, these sorts of things about what we're like on a good day. But actually what's often the place for the richest learning is understanding what we're like under pressure, understanding how we respond to things and how our behavior changes. And we often need others to help us to see this. We need to get feedback from others about how do you know when, how do you think I managed that really difficult conversation? I could feel I was getting defensive and, were there signs of that? What do other people notice so that we can start to see ourselves through a different lens? We often have to make the most important decisions when we're under pressure and we've got imperfect information. That's typical experience in life. So we need to get good at understanding what we're like under pressure. Interestingly, this has a huge carry across to what I was doing in the sporting environment, where again, we needed to know what we were like under pressure. There was no point to be training 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, 49 weeks of the year, if you then crumble on race day. So we got good at talking about each race. What were you thinking? What were the points where you felt, concerned or anxious or tense or worried or wanted to stop or wanted to give up or thought you wouldn't make it through? We actually spoke about those moments so that next time I have that thought come in my head in the race, what am I going to do to counter it? I probably can't totally get rid of it, but I can respond to it in a different way. So learning about ourselves under pressure and really thinking at the moment, how is this situation affecting me and how might others notice that? What am I noticing about myself? What are others seeing? The second area, and the one that really goes to the heart of what we're talking about today, is we need to have relationships that are authentic, that are based on who we really are, with somebody else being themselves, and are collaborative. We actually want to help each other. The whole purpose of the relationship is for us to move each other on in some way, either by offering support or in a work context, perhaps, more in collaborating on a work project together. But to be always looking to have that kind of shared sense of what do we share in this relationship and how can we grow within the relationship. It was sat at the heart of diplomatic work. Our whole business was about developing partnerships, building alliances. But actually, all of our lives are like that. My sporting experience was like that. My business coaching and consulting work is like that. Family life is about being part of a team, part of a family team. So actually, all of our lives revolve around these. And what's important is that we plan them and we think about them very consciously. Often building relationships doesn't come up in our electronic calendar. We don't have a meeting for it. We don't have a time, but all the time we're doing it. So we need to create some headspace about what does success look like in this area. It's fundamental to how we achieve what we want to achieve. It's the relationships are going to be essential. Are we planning that? At the end of the day, do we just think, have I done all my tasks on my to-do list? Or actually, am I thinking, who did I impact and how did I impact them today? And how did I move a relationship forward? And what else might I need to do in order to keep building this relationship that's really key to me thriving in the work that I do or another part of my life? So we start to see relationships as part of the, our daily reviewing of what success looks like. Before I went on my first posting to the beautiful town of Sarajevo in the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it was a post-war, about 10 years after the war that saw the disintegration of the former Yugoslavia. Before I went on that posting, I had this meeting with a very wise and eminent ambassador to seek his advice, to get his input and thoughts ahead of my posting. Now, I thought he was going to concentrate on the geopolitics, give me a lecture on the complex history and politics of the Balkan countries, but he didn't. He said the most important thing in this and all of your work will be about how you connect with others. You may think that there are people who've been through a war who have got nothing in common with you, and in some ways they have had different experiences. But your challenge as a diplomat is to find something in common, to connect and to find a way. There is always something, you just have to look for what it is. And he gave me 3 pieces of advice as to how to do this. The first thing is to get to know the person behind the role. So you might be talking to a president or a prime minister or a senior diplomat, head of the UN office in Sarajevo. But who are they behind that? And it actually takes us back to the first session where we talked about what is it that gets us out of bed in the morning? What do these people really care about? What's important to them? What are their values? What do they spend their time doing when they're not at work? Finding this out is really important to connecting, to understanding who they really are, the real self, the full self, their whole self. And to be looking beyond, we make huge judgments about what's on the business card. They're an account manager, they're an executive this, and actually they will have had a whole host of experiences we know nothing about. And those are often some of the most interesting ones to connect with, to find an area in common, to explore a bit more about how you work together. Now, in order to do this, you need to listen more than you speak. Again, we had a lot of training in listening. It is our most powerful influencing tool. It's a powerful learning tool. It's a powerful influencing tool for us to work with others and build relationships. Always looking to listen beyond what we initially hear, to think about what are the things that haven't been said, to hear also all of the different codes within the language, the tone of voice, the vocabulary used, the way it's said, all of those things that tell us more than simply just what we initially hear at a surface level. And at that point, we can start to explore what we've got in common and to build on that. Often in this world, there were so many obvious barriers, linguistic, cultural, political, you name it. But our challenge was always to find a small area, potentially. We've got something in common, and that's what we start on. That's what we build on. And that's what enables us then to have the conversations about the difficult things that we maybe don't disagree on, because we've got something that will keep us connected through that difficult conversation. If we don't have anything to keep us connected, we might just break apart when we have the hard conversations about the issues we don't agree on. So obviously this is, in an environment of building difficult relationships and some really challenging circumstances. But actually we all live in a world with lots of pressures on us, lots of challenges around us. So I think there are certainly principles that I have continued to use throughout my life, even when I'm not working in a war zone. So I wanted to first of all kind of ask you, and again, let's use the chat for a bit, about what are the sorts of things that we can do that help us to build connections and our network, and what are the things that we can do each week to invest in relationships in our lives? What are all of those small things every day, some of those 1%ers that we can do to help us? So share your thoughts. How do you invest? Yep. Texting, yeah. Asking about their home life, yeah. Asking how they're doing. Is there anything we can do beyond that as well? Because I think, text encouragements, that's lovely. So proactively, if I'm thinking of someone, let them know I'm thinking of them. Again, hugely powerful, really small thing, that's lovely. Yeah, the dialogue. So also think about the quality of the dialogue. What are the different questions I can ask my team when I'm connecting with them to find out how they are? How are we? It's the opener, isn't it? How might I ask, a different element? How are you sleeping? What are the things on your mind at the moment? What are you finding most difficult? What are the things that are helping you? So we're actually starting to get beyond the surface. How are you? And gently exploring what's there, seeing how we can connect on that next level. We're always looking to build levels of connection. We start off on a level of cliche and safety around how are you? How's the weather? What's happening? And that's all very safe. But to build our connections, we need to make sure that we're starting to get through levels of, starting to share facts about what's happening in the world around us, and then starting to share opinions, and then starting to share emotions. So if we're having a conversation about, in those days we used to travel on a train to work, we'd sort of say, oh, we'd start off saying, oh, challenging journey today. And then we might start to share something about, all the trains are running late because there's an issue. There are leaves on the line. And then we might start to have an opinion. I don't think that the way the trains are run is helpful to how we work. Or actually, I don't think the way our meetings are run in this office is very helpful when we're traveling by train. Maybe we could change it. And then we might add some emotion. It's making it really hard for me when I have to be here for an 8:30 a.m. meeting because I can't rely on the trains. So each layer builds a deeper connection as we go. So thinking about how we can always deepen our relationships by getting to that level of opinion and emotion. That's how we start to make them firmer, more secure, more collaborative, and resilient, that we can take difficult challenges and discuss them in these connections that we have. Brilliant. I love that. The use of humor. We have to be careful with humor, but it's an enormous glue, particularly in challenging times. Yeah, good reminder, Catherine. Yeah, I like that, Lara. Really focused. That's really good. That intentional piece. You're right. Small things. It needs to be manageable. We can't do 10 things a day, but we can do one thing a day for somebody else. So absolutely, coaching, I use all the time, not just when I'm doing executive coaching, but actually just that probing. What do you mean by that word? How does that feel for you when they've described something to you? So just a follow-up question to go to that next level all the time. So the different kind of areas, I just sort of listed a few things that we can think about how we support each other, collaborate, again, share stories, bring in those personal stories that stick with people, that they remember, to be thinking about how we show empathy, the different phrases. Consciously, can I use a coaching question here rather than just be on transmit? This is what we've got to do. These are the agenda items. These are the action points. Actually, can we humanize it by really connecting at a deeper level with everyone in the room? What are people bringing into the meetings? They're not just bringing in their role in the meeting. They're bringing in what's happened, the emotions, the experiences. Whilst we can't spend the whole session discussing those, just acknowledging them, even asking a question sometimes, when I know people have had a tough day, of, how present are you feeling for this meeting? On a scale of 1 to 10, and people say, well, actually, 4 and 5 and 7 and 8. Okay, so we've got a mixture here because we've all got other stuff going on. We don't have to necessarily go into that, but we just acknowledge that people are bringing other things with them in the meeting, which enables them to accept them and then actually put things to one side. Yeah, lovely, Zoe. If you're in a mentoring partnership, then you've got that space to allow people to, connect. So there are lots of different relationships we can have. So again, I like this concept. I don't know if you've come across it, of having a personal boardroom, if you like. So if you have a chief executive or a company has got its board, they need to have certain things in order to function. They don't have all the answers themselves. And on the board, you've got somebody who supports you, somebody who develops you. You've got somebody who's interested in challenging your thinking, but you allow them to, because you trust them. But they challenge some of your assumptions. You need people like that in your life. Again, somebody who's going to be a champion for you, who's going to perhaps sponsor you and create opportunities for you. Somebody who's a mentor, like Zoe is talking about there, or somebody that is perhaps a mentee to you. So creating that sense of a personal boardroom, I sometimes just do it on a piece of paper, put myself in the middle, and think, of the people that I connect with in a week. And you can reflect back in a week as well. What sort of role did they play for me? Were they all kind of coaching me, or were they all, supportive and liking everything that I did? So we definitely want supportive people, but we also need to make sure, actually, I've got somebody who challenges me a bit, who's stretching my thinking, and that we then look for the gaps in our network, if you like. I need somebody to mentor me and take me to the next level in my work. Okay, I'm going to use, how can I use the Rising Network to fill some of these gaps? So again, thinking about, if you were a chief executive, what are all the things that you need in order to make sure you're at your best? I need to make sure that, I've got that variety of influence on me. Think about where the gaps are and how you might be able to fill those. So you see your network as a kind of broad piece around you that you're constantly developing. And within the network, who are you closer to? Who are you furthest away from? Sometimes within our organizations, the people we feel less comfortable with are the people we should actually spend some time connecting with, because they see the world in a different way from us. And that's really useful. At the moment, we have a terrible challenge in society of being able to watch people on Twitter who think the same of us, and reading the newspapers that reflect our views, when actually the way to solve these a lot of the challenges that we have is to start thinking beyond our own perspective, beyond our own network. How would somebody else see the world? Why do people vote for this other party? How does the world look through their eyes that looks a good way to, that looks like a good idea? So really consciously, who is stretching your perspective at the moment? So you have some of those difficult conversations that will really help you to do that. Yeah, I massively love the Squiggly Careers approach. You're absolutely right. They have some great tips on, who's in your network and where are the gaps and how can you explore these further. Yeah, lovely. Thanks for reminding me of that. I also quite like when you create your own picture. I mean, I literally would do it on a piece of A4, put myself in the middle and create that chart. So it's a slightly, everyone's chart looks slightly different. And you can color code who's nearest to you or who's warmest to you. You put them in orange, and who feels kind of colder, we'll put them in blue, and actually maybe I spend some time this week warming up that relationship that feels cold, finding out more about it. How can I learn, take the learning approach, the learning mindset? How can I learn a bit more about this person who sees the world differently? I can't remember if I quoted the Abraham Lincoln quote last week that I love, where he says, "I don't like that man. I need to get to know him better." That mindset opens us up to a whole new level of learning, but also connection that are still really meaningful. Connection doesn't have to mean it's easy. Everyone has the same chemistry as you and they look like you. Actually, connection is about, expanding and exploring what's possible for you. So you're learning through your connections. So you can see how the 3Cs really interconnect. One really nice, fun question that I thought I'd ask and be part of our connection today in our last session, quite a fun question to ask perhaps with your teams, is what's one thing that most people don't actually know about you? So I'd love to hear that and I hope that we all feel sort of safest and kind of open to sharing that. Then I'd love to, have a think about that. And some of these questions that are about getting under the surface of who we are. What's one thing most people in your teams wouldn't know about you? It could be something really small, a hobby, something in your past life. Lara, I love that. Yeah, some of those things that actually I really enjoy that kind of seem quite different from the rest of our life. Yeah, that reminds me of sort of one of my confessions. It becomes like a confession time that, yeah, brilliant, Zoe. Fargal, I love these things. This is what brings character. I can see your faces, the smiles. There's a kind of different connection now. We're sharing something that feels a bit like, somebody might make a judgment about me to do with this. But actually, this is who I really am. This is a part of who I am. And the more we can find these things out about each other, keep them coming. I absolutely love them. These will be things that kind of give me that warm feeling when I think back to our sessions together. Again, some of these things that we can almost feel disconnected from because they're not part of who we are now. Brilliant. We got any more? Lily, I haven't heard yours yet. One of my sort of funny ones from school is that I went to school, I was brought up in Essex, and we all learned typing in our school, which totally fits the stereotype of people from Essex becoming secretaries. And I loved my typing lessons. They were my favourite lessons. I did extra typing in the lunch hour because I thought it was I loved it, and I loved the teacher. And actually we used to chat at the same time. And I took all these sort of speed typing competitions. She kind of looked up, why don't we do something? Why don't we do like a competition? So I did like these speed typing competitions, which is kind of not something that's on my CV, but something that was just a hugely fun kind of thing that happened at school that's always quite fun. Yeah, lovely. Gosh, that's a lot of girls, Lily. Great. Yeah, brilliant. So opening up, I mean, these are just so lovely, so unpredictable. I couldn't imagine these things about you. And the connection when we share these things is just at a really different level. It then means that when we have difficult kind of work issues, things to get past, we've sort of gone beyond these things. We've discussed handstands and carrots. We've got this big world in which we're operating, in which the day-to-day conversation is sitting, and we find lovely connections as we have there between Ingrid and Catherine, and when we make those connections, wow, those are really powerful. Gosh, what are we going to do about that now? What's your next course? Is there a handstand course that the Rising Network should be offering? Again, just having some different questions and that coaching approach, the curiosity or the learner mindset that helps us to ask some different questions about the people around us and who they really are beyond the item on the to-do list that you want them to be looking at. When we're thinking about kind of operating in a team situation, I wanted to also share how when we were involved in negotiations, we'd almost have kind of two tracks of how we would be moving forward the technical issue we were negotiating, but also making sure we're moving forward connecting. So we'd be looking at the text, maybe we were negotiating an EU directive, maybe we would be negotiating some kind of element of a peace agreement or some element of a reform for a country or an international agreement. So we'd be having the technical discussion about what the substance is. There was then a whole nother conversation that we're developing at the same time, where we would be thinking about what's happening in the room. What are other people saying? So we'd be checking our listening skills, because often we'd imagine what we thought other people had said. We're expecting that the Germans are going to say this and the Spanish are going to say this, when actually they might have said something slightly different. So we would typically work in a negotiating team of perhaps 4 or 5 of us, and we'd say, well, actually, I'm not sure I heard that. I thought I heard something different. Okay, well, we need to go back and clarify what we heard. The second thing is then actually what are other people feeling, and really tapping into the empathy. When we said this, how do people respond? What's the emotion? Where is that in the room? And how can we work with that and understand what that's telling us? Do other people understand our position? So just as we made assumptions about them, are they making assumptions about what we're thinking? So checking back, what do they actually think our position is? And is there maybe some nuance that they've missed that could make it easier to move forward and reach an agreement? Always a useful question. How can we support others and their ideas? We won't get what we want unless we're actually thinking about what everyone else wants and how we move closer to them. You can actually see how absent a lot of this was from the whole Brexit process, and how it then ended up an imperfect agreement for everybody, because we weren't going in with these core principles. The last one, the learner mindset, the curiosity piece, always exploring alternatives. When we start to get into a combative mode, okay, let's leave these options. When we get down to 2 options where we're saying, I want this, I want something opposite. Okay, let's get exploring the alternatives, always bringing in other options that open up different ways of doing things. So again, checking on these things in our meetings, am I showing listening? Am I showing empathy? What did other people really say? How can I support other ideas, even though they seem really difficult to me and I want to get my thing through? Let me put that to one side for a minute and think about what is important to them, because that is going to be the best way of getting what you want through. And that curiosity all the time, especially as you get frustrated, the curiosity can help us to get rid of that each time. So it's time to have that moment of sharing some of your own thinking about what we've discussed. 2 questions really, just to share a bit more, any of those other tips about what you're doing to invest in relationships. But then beyond that, to think about who is there who you might want to bring onto your personal board, as it were. Who is there in your network that you could maybe develop a deeper connection with, who could bring another dimension to what you do? Those are the questions. Take a picture of them. Lily will, I think, add them into the breakout rooms for you as well once you're in. But take a picture. Think about, how can you explore this further? What does this look like? What does good look like when you're at the end of the day and you're thinking, or the end of a week, thinking, I've had a good week. I've really invested in relationships and connections. What are the things you'll be looking for that you've done? Okay, Lily, over to you. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody back. Yeah, great. How are those conversations? Give me a, yeah, thumbs up, that's good. Any particular, if there's any nuggets in your room that you think were useful to share with others, then add them into the chat. If there was any particular thoughts or any kind of additional reflections there. Had a really interesting conversation in our room about different ways of reaching out, on LinkedIn, beyond sort of making sure you're actually finding multiple ways in which you can connect with someone, thinking about it differently. Think about who you are most connected to. These are your reflection points to take away, and what's the quality of those connections? What could you do to increase the quality, and have that as part of your weekly aims, rather than ticking off tasks. Actually, improving the quality of a connection might be a much better way of spending time than, countless emails, whatever it is that can take over our lives. Think about the experience you want to have. One of those questions we talked about, clarifying the experience, think of this, connections comes hugely into this. What are the experiences that you want to create for yourself and those around you? And what might you do in order to start moving towards that, in order to shape those? Always try and reach out beyond the obvious people, the people who think differently, perhaps rivals even. Those can be actually some of the richest relationships in the end. They can be a little harder to get to. And think about, how am I investing in connecting behaviours? Again, reviewing your day or week. What was the quality of my conversations? Was I really present? Was I curious? Was I listening? Was I asking coaching questions to find out more? We'll be developing that sense of purpose, connecting at a deeper level than a transactional, I want this, you want this, that then has no kind of lasting value. And just think about how you prioritize people in your life, and how you might want to make some shifts in this. I think we're all reevaluating hugely the importance of social connection to us, how much we miss it in the way we had it before, and what can we do different to still help us. Social capital, as it's often called in resilience literature, is really important for us to succeed, and a really important part of success on our own terms. So we're there. I'm afraid the time, as always, has flown, and I really enjoyed spending these 3 sessions with you. I just really hope you've got some ideas and thoughts, and some plans in your head to keep developing your long win, defining success on your own terms, and a sense of how you can go about pursuing that. But thank you very much for joining us over these 3 weeks. It's been an absolute pleasure for me.
Thank you so much, Kath, and a big round of applause, a virtual applause or applause. It's been so wonderful to have you for the 3 weeks to guide us through this kind of journey of self-reflection. And I call it self-reflection because I think certainly for myself, it's given me time out in my busy day to actually stop and look at actually what is it that makes Lily happy more long term. So not just about kind of work, but across all areas of my life, and how can I build that happiness or create that long-term success, looking at all the connections around me. So thank you, Kath, for taking out the time to deliver this amazing course.